Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Education meeting. The board has already met in executive session, and we saluted the flag there. So at this point, we're going to have a roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne. Here. Mrs. Smarter.
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Staff. Here. Mrs. White.
Here.
Mrs. Richmond.
Here.
Mrs. Thorne.
Here.
Mrs. Wolger.
Here.
Mr. Sack. Here. Mr. Aaron. Here. Mrs. McHugh.
Here.
Madam President.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw your attention to the statement of public notice in your minutes. It says that there's 2 times for public comment during this meeting. The first one is earlier on in the agenda, and it's for public comment on agenda items, if you want to speak on anything that's on the agenda. And then later in the meeting, there's public comment on non-agenda items where you can speak about anything you'd like to. If you do come up, you can put your name and address on the clipboard and tell us your name and address when you come up to the microphone, please. Thank you. I also wanted to point out that the meeting is being recorded. And it's been advertised in the papers as according to the law. Mr. Pruitt always makes sure that I remember to say that. I just forget. Okay, we're up to the student representative, Maddie.
All right, so this past few weeks have been filled with a lot of sports activities. Volleyball won counties, Rich Girls Volleyball. The football team is moving to their first round of states this Friday. It's a home game, which is awesome. They have home advantage. Field hockey is moving into their second round of states tomorrow, as is girls soccer for their first round. And we had to postpone the huge Powder Puff football game we talked about due to the nor'easter that came through. That's actually being postponed all the way to June, but hopefully it'll be a bigger event just because of weather, and we couldn't get turf time. So that'll be a bigger event hopefully in June. And lastly, student government is really excited to speak to the Board of Ed all together. I think it's November 5th is the date. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Any questions?
First of all, congratulations on the soccer.
Thank you.
And do you know yet who we're playing in football on Friday?
It's East something.
East Orange.
East Orange, okay, I was just told it, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Sure.
At this point, we're going to have a board presentation on the student stressor survey. We're going to move down below for that. So just give us one moment.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us. I just wanted to take a minute to thank Caitlin Kordusky and Lucy Forgione from the Burns Township Health Department. They came here this evening to talk to us a little bit about the health department and mainly to focus on the student stressor survey that was done last spring. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Hi everyone. So the first thing we're going to kick tonight off with is a really special video. So my role at the health department is I'm a health educator. I'm also the Municipal Alliance Grant Coordinator, and I'm also the advisor for a really fun group of kids called Ridge Against Alcohol and Drugs. 2 weeks ago, I can't remember all of a sudden, was the annual empowerment day that was actually mostly right here in this room, but it's a day for 8th graders dedicated to them, helping them make good choices and decisions during their last year at William Mannon and then into the high school. So we thought it'd be fun to start the evening with a video done by one of our sophomores, Alex Timoney. And it's a video all about natural highs, which our RAD students do their best to impose upon the rest of their adolescent friends. That sounded good. Anyway, so it's just a fun video that the kids made, and hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to stand here for a second to make sure the music doesn't go off so much.
Think I can fly. Think I can fly when I'm with you. My arms are wide, catching fire as the wind blows. I know that I'm rich enough for pride. I see $1 billion in your eyes, even if we're strangers till we die.
There are different kinds of natural highs. They can be brief and fleeting, like getting the winning score for your team. It can be enduring, like learning to play a musical instrument you love, or it can be lifelong, like doing work you look forward to every day.
My natural high is singing. I'm through accepting limits. Someone says they're so. Some things I cannot change. Until I try, I'll never know. Too long I've been afraid of losing love. I guess I'm lost. Well, if that's love becomes a much too high a cost, I'd survive defying gravity. Kiss me goodnight. I'm defying gravity. You can't hold me down.
My natural high is fencing.
My natural high is playing the guitar.
There are many things that can interfere with a great natural high. It can be your attitude or the attitude of people around you. You do have to put a little work into achieving a natural high. It requires effort and creativity, but the payoff can change your life in a positive way.
My natural high is having fun and laughing with friends.
The key element to achieving healthy, natural highs is to incorporate them into a balanced life. If any activity interferes with your academic, social, or emotional functioning, then it's out of balance.
According to Dr. Matt Bellis, achieving natural highs means you need to lead. L, lean on healthy people for support. E, express your emotions in a healthy way. A, achieve natural highs every day, and D, don't be afraid to take a stand.
When the morning comes and we see what we've become, in the cold light of day we're a flame in the wind of the fire that we begun. Every argument, every word we can't take back, 'cause with all that has happened I think that we both know the way that the story ends. Then only for a minute I want to change my mind, 'cause this just don't feel right to me. I wanna raise your spirits, I want to see you smile. No, that means I'll have to leave.
Bring your healthy people for support because you one of the most important parts of living a naturally high lifestyle. If you're surrounded with positive support, it can encourage you to step outside your comfort zone and try new things. This is why the National Institute of Drug Abuse lists the number of one projector against adolescent substance abuse as strong and positive social support.
I hope you enjoyed that. As simple as it seems, it's so important that we share the natural highs that our students can have fun without the use of alcohol and drugs. We at the Berners Township Health Department have been working at this for a long, long time. I have been there for 35 years, I did say it. So, and I remember when we started our municipal lines, it was actually 29 years ago, because I know I said it was 29 today. We had been working on alcohol and drug prevention, and also looking at our students to make sure that they are well-rounded in every single way. As a parent of a Berners Township School system graduates, I have 2 sons. I think we give the school a really great product. But I think there are a lot of things that they face all day to day that they need people like us and adults to help them with. The Student Stressor Survey and Asset Survey, we've been doing this is our 3rd time around. We have a survey in 2005, then in 2012, and then again this year in 2018. And I think this evening we will share some of the results with you, and we will also compare what we've seen, if there are any trends for the last 3 times that we've been doing these surveys, and also give you some potential ideas for how we can address them. I think it's a lot of these things that we see are societal changes and things that bring stress onto our children. Mainly I see it with the use of the internet or Facebook or media in general. So we'll start with the first slide, which is our study process. Our study process is really looking at and assessing the presence among students of the Search Institute's developmental assets. The first is to support from family, school, and community. Empowerment, valuing of the young people by the community. We are looking at boundaries and expectations. Are there clear expectations and limits? Constructive use of time, enriching activities in which young people can participate, commitment to learning, a lifelong commitment to learning and education, positive values, guiding values for choices, social competencies, skills equipping young people to make effective choices, and lastly, positive identity, the sense of purpose and worth. So these are the things that we looked at in the survey. The questionnaire design, we had 25 questions drawn from the Search Institute. The remaining questions were developed specifically for this project, and parental permission was gotten for each child completing the questionnaire. It was distributed to 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders in the classroom. The response rate, we had 1,314 completed surveys, and if you can look at the diagram here, you'll see that we had an excellent return rate. 70% is really tremendous, and this was with parental permission. And so we had a total of 82% 6th graders, 85% 8th graders, 64% 10th, and 65% 12th graders, which is about average what we've seen in other surveys as well. Our demographic characteristics. Is responded by class and gender, and you can see here that we had in 6th grade 49% were male and 49% female, and 8th grade 47% female and 49% male. So really across, it's really not that different if you look at it. It's pretty much evenly distributed, with an overall 50.3% were female, almost 48% were male respondents. Student age, and this again is pretty average in that, you see the 6th and 8th grade, they're in between 11 and 12 years old, and also between 13 and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, they're about the same, where there's that difference right there in the age. Student ethnicity. The majority of respondents were white, and the second largest group students identified as Asian or Asian Americans. And then there was another group that was 12.8, and that was other alone, and that's what those students identified themselves to be, of whatever ethnicity they put down. Other demographic information, we had 77% of our students saying that they had grades of either A's and B's, and 85% lived with both parents, and 63% lived in current households 10 or more years. So there's a lot of stability here with our students. And then I'm going to give the hard part over to Caitlin. So thank you so much for listening.
So as Lucy mentioned, we are looking not only at the 2018 results, but also comparing them to 2005 and 2012 results. So this first slide shows kind of an overall rating of parent support, school support, other support, family and school rules, and commitment to school summary. So all of these are based on a 1 to 5 point scale, in which 5 is the highest. So looking at this, you can see that it's pretty high. They're all close to 5 or a little bit below. And this is similar, positive identity, resistance summary, people's relationship summaries, work ethic, responsibility summary, and empowerment and safety. Again, a 1 to 5 rating scale, and they're all pretty high. So this is percent of students participating in athletics and intramural sports, very high, over 80% for each grade level. So we have a lot of kids participating in athletics and intramural sports. So some results. So this is based on support. So that's one of the first categories we talked about. And about 1/4 of all students indicated feeling that there was too much pressure to do well from parents. And out of those students, they were more likely to indicate that they did not get the support that they needed from parents. And about half the students indicated getting support from teachers, but about 40% of students indicated feeling that the teachers really cared about them. So one of the questions that we asked was if students felt like there was someone that they could turn to for help. This could either be in the school or in their everyday life. And this is, again, 2005 to 2012. And you can see there was a little bit of a change in strongly disagree, but overall, most of the students agree or strongly agree that there's someone that they can turn to in their community. More results from support. Most students identified that the close relative or family friend was their most likely confidant or support system. And about half said they would be somewhat likely to consider a teacher or a coach as a confidant. The next slide will show the exact percentages of what students considered support for them. So the first is guidance school counselor, second is school nurse, then we have doctor or nurse other than a school nurse or other healthcare professional, an adult in your neighborhood. And then we had teacher, a coach, a close relative or family member, and student assistance counselor. So I just want to point out that those 2 slides ago we said a close relative or family member was the most likely support, and that's the second one from the bottom. So most students indicated high levels of achievement motivation, which means that their main motivation was to achieve. There was a small segment of students who did not expect to succeed with hard work. By 10th grade, over half students report copying homework 2 or more times in the past year. And about 1/4 of 10th and 12th graders reported copying an internet document, so something like a Quizlet, or a classroom assignment 2 or more times. It's also indicative that students who cheat in one way are more likely to cheat in another way. So mental health. So most students indicated they felt good about themselves and they didn't experience frequent sadness or loneliness. About 25% of 10th and 12th graders reported feeling sad a lot of the time. And these feelings of sadness are associated with a variety of factors. Feeling that there's someone that they can't turn to, parents not providing the needed help and support. Stigma is a really big thing, so maybe their parents aren't understanding what they're going through. School not providing encouragement, and ultimately not expecting to succeed. So here we had the 2 questions. I feel sad a lot of the time, and I often feel lonely. Just like we said before, the kind of increased over the past few years. So decision making. So most students indicated they thought things through before acting. About 25% of students indicated a tendency towards acting impulsively, which is pretty typical in adolescence. Students who reported doing things they regret afterwards were more likely to respond that they didn't think things through before acting. About 12% of 12th graders reported riding with someone their own age who had been drinking, and they indicated that they believe 30% of these same drivers were drunk. So 30% they thought were drunk, and perhaps the other 70% they thought maybe buzz doesn't count, or they had already had a few drinks and they weren't drunk yet. Over 1/4 of students responded that they had ridden in a car with someone not their age who had been drinking. So this could be a parent or someone older than them, and they reported that they thought 19% of those drivers were drunk. Bullying. So over 80% of students had never been bullied in any way, but about 5% of students reported experiencing some form of bullying once a week or more. In addition, those students were more likely to report feeling sad and lonely. So now we're looking at additional results, rules. So the question was, or the question posed to the students was, my school has clear rules about what students can and cannot do, and my family has clear rules about what I can and cannot do. A couple years ago, we saw that the family rules were a little bit less clear and the school rules were a little bit more clear, and it's kind of stayed the same. We look at social competencies, so I care about other people's feelings, helping other people, and getting to know people of different races or ethnic groups. So is that something that's important? Again, you can see the trends. Another portion of social competencies that we looked at was adults in my town or city make me feel useful. Students help decide what goes on in the school, and I feel safe at my school. We added a question this year pertaining to electronic cigarettes, since that's been a really big trend among adolescents. So we asked them about past 30-day use of electronic cigarettes for tobacco. So that would be your Juul or your Fix or personal vaping devices. And then the second question we asked was if the students used electronic cigarettes for marijuana or THC oil. So those are those vape pens that are on the left-hand side. This is something that we've been talking about a lot recently, especially from the health department perspective and the municipal alliance. So, oops, sorry for that. This probably, as we've seen sometimes with drug and alcohol related questions, maybe underreported if the student is a little bit nervous about that information getting out, but you can kind of see, more and more students use them as they get older, and they're seeing it in the 8th and 10th grade section a lot. So we had a couple questions about alcohol, but this slide was particularly interesting. Percent of students indicating mostly true to parents' approval to drink beer once in a while. So this is if the parents would approve of the child having a beer once in a while. And we saw that 12th grade got to 65%. So a little bit more about alcohol use. 68.6% of 10th graders and 77.1% of 12th graders believe that half or more students their age get drunk at least once a month. Over half of 10th graders and 3/4 of 12th graders believe their peers would approve of them drinking alcohol sometimes. It's really important to note with this, if any of you are familiar with the American Drug and Alcohol Survey, we usually do that every other year, so that has a little bit more information. We did that last time in 2016. So these are not actual measures of frequency of alcohol consumption. The perceptions are indicative of students' beliefs and suggest a culture in which there is substantial underage drinking. So even though it doesn't indicate that it's happening, kids are thinking that it is. So these are implications of findings from Dr. Harlow. Dr. Harlow has been working with us, as Lucy mentioned, for many years. He helped us develop the student stressor survey. He knows our town pretty well, and so like the results from the 2005 and 2012 surveys, most students present high level of developmental assets. So important step for the school district and communities to sustain the positive results into the future. So since about 25% of 10th and 12th graders indicated some emotional difficulty, additional attention to students' emotional well-being may be worthwhile. Students experiencing emotional difficulties also reported feeling less support from parents and teachers, and less willing to reach out to a confidant. So a challenge that we see all the time with this is finding ways to encourage students to meet them where they are, because they're less likely to seek out available assistance. So being able to reach out to students, decreasing stigma is really important in this case. So the evidence that students are riding in cars in which the driver is drunk suggests the need for increased efforts to prevent driving while drunk. This is both with someone their own age and also with parents or someone older than them. So communications about designated drivers, approaches for taking away the keys of a potential drunk driver, and arrangements with local taxi companies are a couple ideas for potential responses to the issue. And students are also riding with non-peers who may be drunk, so it's useful to help students find ways to respond to a parent or another adult in their life who may be driving. And cheating is quite common among students. Some students may believe it's necessary to cheat in order to achieve success. Like we mentioned before, there is high motivation for achievement, so they're more likely to cheat in order to get that success. It may be useful to explore approaches to reduce cheating, such as software that identifies plagiarism in written work. And a greater challenge is to counter attitudes in which some cheating is viewed as an acceptable means to an end. So about 25% of students respond that they didn't think things through before acting, and those students are more likely to do things that they regret. So the good thing about this is that the students are aware of their behavior, and they may be receptive to learning ways to strengthen their ability to look before they leap. As I mentioned before, this is a typical adolescent behavior. So next steps. Collaboration between the school, health department, and other organizations to work on initiatives and programs moving forward. Meetings to review current data, strategic planning, priorities for kids to know how to access their supports at schools and to understand the roles of their supports. So we have an amazing school system. We have amazing guidance counselors, we have amazing school counselors and SACs, and the problem is that the kids may not know how to access them or where they are. I keep looking at her, Stephanie Smith over there. We've already met and talked about some of these results and how to get kids into the guidance counselors more, because we have all these fantastic resources and the kids just need to be able to use them. Continuing educational presentations, attempt to reach parents through other media. Sometimes doing night programs just doesn't work, so do we reach out to them through social media? Do we do videos, podcasts? How do we get information out to the parents? And continuing educating young people with up-to-date information and trends as they become available. It's really important to keep data local, and it's important to keep data up to date and to know what's going on in the community. The Health Department and the Municipal Alliance are going to continue efforts to destigmatize mental health. As some of you may know, I'm a youth mental health first aid trainer, so I've been doing classes in town for about a year now. We have one coming up in December. It's already full, which is really exciting, so we're doing another one in January. And we're just going to keep doing those to educate the community all about mental health and how to destigmatize it. And future surveys. So we've been talking to Nick, and we've been looking at the Pride survey as a possibility to replace both the American Drug and Alcohol survey and the Student Stressor survey. There'll be less disruption in classroom times, as it would be one survey every other year as opposed to two different surveys. And we're currently looking at them to make sure that the questions in the Pride survey can address everything that we need. So this was a really big undertaking, so I just really want to thank the Board of Education as a whole, especially Nick, who I was on the phone with a lot leading up to the survey. Ridge High School, especially Mr. Krause and Ann Sobine, who were the two key people in getting the surveys out to the 10th and the 12th graders. William Mann Middle School, Ms. Hudak, and Amy Stem. Amy and I worked together to get the survey out to the 6th and 8th graders. Burns Township Health Department, and of course Dr. Harlow, who looked at all of our results, and he helped us make the survey, make sure all the questions were valid, and he's just been fantastic through all of this. And that is our information. So the board, you all have in your folder, you have a copy of this presentation. You also have the executive summary, and you have the comparison between 2005, 2012, and 2018. So the full results of the survey, Nick, I can email them to the whole board, only because it's a lot of paper. So we can email that out, and they will be available on our website probably tomorrow, since it's now been sent to the board. Thank you very much, everyone, especially to the kids that are in the room. I know this was a lot of information to see about you guys. And thank you to everyone who listened to the survey. I hope it was interesting. I hope you learned some new information. And like I said, the full report will be online if you want to view that and other things that we didn't say.
We take a few questions from the board.
It's really mainly, my question is mainly about wanting to do the product survey in the future and what that entails. Because I did some preliminary research about the product survey. It's pretty extensive. There's a lot of different options and forms that it can take. So I just sort of wanted to get your philosophy of why switching to that would be better for the district, besides, you said, consolidating it in doing less. Having to serve the students less times is great. But I know that they also take like 45 minutes, you know, for the students, and I just wondered how you were going to
So far, looking into it, the Pride survey, like you said, has a bunch of different options. The one that we're looking at is the, I guess you could call it the standard Pride survey. And from what I've heard, just through other organizations that do, other schools that do the Pride survey, I think I've heard the time is closer to about 20-25 minutes, which is what the ADAS and both the Student Stressor Survey typically takes. I am blanking off the top of my head how many questions it is, but we do have the potential to add questions to help organizations. If we have something on the Pride survey that we don't, if there's something missing from the Pride survey that we found really valuable in either the ADAS or the Student Stressor Survey. Hope that answered the question.
Hi, this is really interesting work. It's a little concerning the safety question that you asked. There's a pretty big swing between agree that I feel safe in my school, obviously an increase in the upcoming increase, disagree.
So the Student Stressor Survey this year was taken at the beginning of June, and there's a possibility that right after March of Life and Parkland, maybe students' thoughts have switched a little bit. But we usually typically do the Pride survey, the Student Stressor Survey in either May or June. So I believe we did it in May of 2012, and I'm not sure about 2005 off the top of my head.
So then we're running this on every 6-7 year cycle, something like that. So we won't know if this is an outlier until the next time around.
Right, so that is a question that we could potentially add to the Pride survey. Or is that a question in the culture and climate, or is?
So we obviously talked about that same number that you noticed, and we were surprised as well because we had just given a culture and climate survey in spring of 17, I think it was, and the numbers about students feeling safe in school were in the 90s, much higher, consistent with 2005 and 2012. So the best we could come up with was the timing of the survey being right around the time the students were doing the walkout and Parkland was going on. So if we do the Pride survey again, if we do the Pride survey for the first time next year, meaning 2019, the current school year, hopefully we can see if that turns around a little bit. We talked about the fact that the Pride survey would replace 2 of the other surveys, and we might be interested in using that as a new baseline going forward. And for that reason, we're considering whether it be possible to do that survey even this school year, this spring.
And then 2 other questions. One is, do you have like the trend lines for cigarettes and alcohol use like you have for the other questions?
E-cigarettes we don't, because that was the first time we added the question. And this.
Or just generally for drug and alcohol?
That is more of a question for the American Drug and Alcohol Survey. This one's more focused on stressors. We just thought it was important to add, like I said, the e-cigarette question. There's a couple, you can see it in the full report, the trends for drugs and alcohol.
Oh, okay, great. And then the last question is there something that, like you mentioned, there's programs and counselors and assistants, so like, one of the issues was that 25% of 10th and 12th graders reported feeling sad a lot of the time, which is sad.
Yeah.
So is there something that ties, like if you answered that you are sad a lot of the time, have you done this? Have you tried this? Have you talked to the counselor? Something that like determines whether the programs or resources that we have, kids are using them that are in this kind of this program.
So is there a connection between the kids who say they're sad and utilizing?
Is there something that, like, on the stressor survey that ties the programs that we have to the stressors being felt?
No.
Okay. Is that something that we have in culture and climate? Like, okay. Thanks. This is really great work.
I have a question. I just want to make a comment as a parent who's had a child involved, that I think that this is such a wonderful program that you have, and after coming off of Empowerment Day a few weeks ago, I almost wish that there was a way, because I do think that there's a bit of a stigma associated with joining the group, like this, and getting kids to join. And I think you're grabbing at the best time with 8th grade feeding into the Lindsay Meyer Teen Institute. And I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but that's how you do get some of the up and rising freshmen to join that, because they get involved in that and they find a purpose and something to believe in. And I think that we need more of that, and I think that that's forgotten as the kids get a little bit older. And I'm wondering if maybe there's some way to bring, we're seeing in 10th grade, it seems like there's that jump of I feel sad, I'm not happy, and perhaps I'm doing some of the things that I shouldn't do, to revisit some of those topics from empowerment day in 8th grade, in 10th grade, and to have the kids in RAD be involved, because it might get rid of some of that stigma of joining a group like this and recognizing that there are kids to go to, there are people to go to. That would be my only feedback.
That'd be awesome.
First of all, I want to thank both Lucy and Caitlin for the amazing work you do with our students. My comment is more for the board and the administrators than for you. The number that really talks to me is the amount of students who do not feel that both our guidance counselors and our student assistant counselors are people they can go to when they need help. I think it's probably due to the fact that we haven't promoted their availability and accessibility for mental health and support issues. I don't fault our guidance department, I don't fault our SACs. I think it's probably in how we're creating awareness for our students. So maybe as a board, we need to start thinking about how we can use that resource better for our students. But,
I want to echo what they've said, and just add that also notable in that same section was the number of students that were somewhat or highly likely to reach out to a coach and point out the fact that on a weekly basis, nobody, if you're on a team, no one adult spends more time other than hopefully your parents with a student than a coach. It can be 15 hours in a week. And I think we need to foster the opportunity for SEL programming through our coaching staff, because it's just another link for the kids, and if that's the trusted adult, in addition to hopefully introductions to guidance counselors and maybe informal meetings in a way that isn't over here to talk about your schedule or something very defined, would open that door to another avenue for hopefully bigger numbers of kids to feel that sense of confidence that they can reach out to an adult. And just another unrelated item. Some of it's a little, I'm not a statistician, but it bothers me just a little bit that the numbers dramatically dropped. 20% to me is dramatic between the 8th grade and then the 10th and 12th grade, which were in the 60s. So when we look at some of the results, it's really 50% or 60%. It's not 50% of the whole 400 and whatever number of students in that grade. So I know there's not much we can do. It's optional for elected to respond. But it doesn't tell us the whole picture as clearly as if we had 80% of the kids respond.
So the first thing, I just want to say, not to plug my own program again, but Youth Mental Health First Aid, we get a lot of coaches coming in to take that class because of how often, the course is intended for adults who spend a lot of time around youth. So we have a lot of teachers, we taught the whole administrative staff over the summer, I think another 30 teachers, so 60 members of the school district were able to get that training. And we had coaches, and I had coaches come from other towns to take the class. And then the second thing about the results, the 6th to 8th versus the 10th and 12th. So what we're hoping, and we're looking at Nick, and hope he agrees with me, we're looking into maybe electronic permission slips, possibly in the future. The permission slips do go out as a hard copy and also through Friday folder. I believe also a direct blast to specifically 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade parents. We can't legally survey the kids unless parents give permission, so that also leaves, I know when I was in middle school, half of the papers that were supposed to go home to my mom ended up on the bottom of my book bag. So who knows where a lot of the permission slips went. You know, we do our best. We do several rounds of the permission slip. We send it out a couple times. We send it out through different mediums. But again, ultimately, we're only able to survey the ones whose parents said yes. So if we don't get a permission slip, there's no survey in there. But I do see.
I'm not a current parent, so I'm a little bit more remote from the rest of the board, but I don't see the kids every time I see them in the restaurants or playing. They're not talking to one another. They're not playing with one another. They're on their devices, and they can even sit at the same table and not talk to one another. They're sending messages back and forth. You didn't really tell us if the problem is worse or not. Are there more kids being brought to the hospital on a regular basis today than there were 5 years ago? I would expect more kids to the hospital. I would expect bigger problems. I think the problems get worse, and I don't have a clue on how to fix it, but I think between the internet, the fact that kids aren't even playing, they're talking with one another. Yes, they do have sports programs, but the parents are very involved there. They're traveling all over the place, and the parents are running those younger programs. I would be very surprised if the problems not worse.
I do want to point out that a lot of our elementary school PTOs are doing really fantastic programs. I know Liberty Corner PTO in particular did a program a week ago with Megan Cook, who did a program on resiliency. And so programs are being done by the organizations in this town, us included, of course, but just wanted to point out the PTO program, and that's being done for elementary school parents. So it's fostering that in the younger generation. Hopefully we'll see more of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we are back on the agenda. We are now up to superintendent's report. There are 5 items. Would someone like to make a motion for items 1 through 5? Mrs. White and Mrs. Wooldridge. Do you have anything to say for superintendent's report, or should I start talking? Okay. The number 1 is the school nursing plan that we approve each year. The second one is our HIV report that we do each month. Field trips is number 3. Forensics overnight trip. And number 5 is new clubs. Does anyone have any questions about those items? Okay, could we
we have a roll call, please?
Are we gonna go through the nursing report at all in detail?
Did you have questions about it?
Or any changes, what is that?
Well, just a quick summary, and I'm sure it's work.
Yes, sir. Every school, can you hear me? Every school district in New Jersey, Mike, is required to submit a nursing services plan. And essentially, the plan serves two purposes. One is to make sure that we're aligned with all New Jersey administrative code, so we go through and make sure that we're aligned with any changes to code. But the more specific, more tailored is the data that we have to submit on our services that we provided. So if you look at the breakdown, what's provided to the board and made available to the public is that the district must list all of the services individually with each building. So if you look at the last two pages, Mike actually took your plan, but if you look at the last couple of pages, you'll see that we list everything from the number of nurses in each building to the number of services offered per student per building. And then what we do each year is we look at how our staff are being used. Do we have to make any changes to the deployment of our nurses? Are we hiring nurses, moving nurses around? We've made some changes in recent years to the number of nurses in the school system, and including using nurses on buses, depending upon the needs of students. So that's all reflected in the nursing services plan.
Anything specific compared to last year's plan?
No, your services are really building dependent. So when you have students in specific buildings that have more emergent needs or more serious medical needs, you're going to see more visits in that nurse's office. So you'll see some of our buildings have increased visits because of the needs of the specific population of students, but nothing unusual that you point to year over year now.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne?
I think I'm gonna pass.
Mrs. Smarter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Bridgman?
Yes.
Mrs. Corn?
Yes.
Mrs. Boulder?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes. Thank you. We're up to public comment on agenda items. If you have a comment on something on the agenda, please come up and tell us your name and address, and you can sign in after you speak if you'd like to.
Good evening. Based on what we saw with student stressors, I have a quick question to ask, not question, but recommendation in terms of our guidance counselors. It seems to me, I don't speak for Cedar Hill, that we want a phenomenal guidance counselor and a lot of kids with a lot of issues. So I'm just making a plea that maybe the board would consider hiring new guidance counselors throughout the district in the upcoming years to avoid the student stressors getting worse as the years go on, as the kids get older. Thank you.
Sorry, did you say your name and address when you came up? Thanks.
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth Vinhall, 22 Elizabeth Street.
Okay,
Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment on agenda items? Okay, at this point, I'll close public comment. We're up to approval of minutes. We have one item. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Korn. Any questions or comments? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes?
Mrs. Smarter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Bridgman?
Yes.
Mrs. Corn?
Yes.
Mrs. Boulder?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. We're up to the Finance Committee. We have items 1 through 36. There's an addendum page. Would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Woldridge and Mrs. Gray. I have the Finance committee report. It's in my car, so I have to read it off on my phone, so I apologize. The Finance Committee met on Wednesday, October 17th. We spent a good part of the meeting going over our requirements for QSAC, which is the state's way of coming and checking up on a school district to see if we're doing what we're supposed to do. So we reviewed all of the different finance areas that we get QSAC'd on. So each committee on the board will be reviewing the different areas of QSAC that fall in their purview. So, thanks. Okay, so we went through all of the finance items, and we are in compliance with all of our reporting and accountability requirements. So we self-assessed ourselves with the maximum scores for finance. These will all get sent to the state, and then the county office comes out and reviews our district to see if we're in compliance, and then they will see if they agree with our assessment. That happens in the springtime. So we are going to be voting to send our QSAC self-reported scores sometime at our November meeting. Then we reviewed some things with Aramark's facilities and got an update on what's going on with Aramark. There was a question about the fencing along that side of Astor Field, and Mr. McLaughlin said there's a type of netting that might be able to be used there that could be taken down for plowing in the winter, which would make it a lot easier to plow in the parking lot at Ridge. We went over the fact that there already were at this point in time, notices in the newspaper for 2 bids. One is going to be on the HVAC project at WAMS for the next installment, the last installment of our work here. Yeah, so we should be getting a report on how the bids went in November probably at finance. Okay. We changed our November meeting date. This is not scrolling for me, I'm sorry. Okay. We went over our budget calendar for the year, and Mr. McLaughlin explained that the administrative team has started working on their budget items. They have time to enter all their data and what they think they're going to need for next year, and then a draft budget starts to be developed. A couple challenges we talked on was projecting healthcare costs, because we have only 6 months of data since we went to the self-funding, so we have to use different formulas to do our data to project our costs. Another unknown for our budget is what's going to be going with state aid, which we won't know until later. We had some questions about the WAMS Culture and Climate Project with St. Elizabeth's and the United Way. Board members were asking about the cost of the program, and we're questioning whether the PTO was interested in funding the second and third year of the program, so we're going to get an update on that next time. And then the action items for tonight's agenda. Items 1 to 4 are standing items. Item 5 is a generous donation from Berners Township PEC to support the WAM Summer Fund Program. So if there's any PEC members here, we thank you for your generous donation. Item 6 is a donation from the Mount Prospect PTO for playground improvements. So we thank the Mount Prospect PTO for that generous donation. Item 7 is the disposal of equipment and books. Item 8 is approval for field trips. Item 9 is a contract with our attorney for negotiations. Sorry, I'll be back. Item 10 is the approval of our comprehensive maintenance plan, which we're required to submit each year. Items 11 to 25 are services for students. Item 26 and 27 are tuition for students at Somerset County VOTEC. Items 28 to 31 are more services for students. Items 32 and 33 are professional development. Item 34 is approval for us to distribute non-public aid money to schools, which we're required to do by the state. And then we have item 35, which is my minutes. Oh, it's a settlement, 35, and then 36 is the addendum, and that is an adjustment to an earlier item that we approved in April to do architectural work for William Ann project, and we're reducing the amount that we approved because we're now going to be upgrading the curtain wall instead of replacing it, so we don't need to have as large of an amount. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Salmon?
Can you explain item number 34 and what the requirement is there? It looks like we're providing the St. James and all our school security.
It's actually state aid that we have to funnel through us to them. So it's not our money, it's the state's money, but we have to distribute it to them, is that correct? Yeah. So that's the way they get their state aid for these items, is funneled through us.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Sam?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richards?
Yes.
Mrs. Thorne?
Yes.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh? Madam President?
Thank you. We're up to personnel now. There's 22 items. Would someone like to make a motion? Mrs. Swerner and Mrs. White.
Is this mic working? I can't tell. It is, okay, good. Personnel met on October 19th. We first met with Ms. O'Connell to discuss the need for an additional behaviorist position in order to better address student needs. The Personnel Committee has recommended searching to staff this need. We also discussed business office support staff. Historically, we had 2.5 accounts payable clerks and administrative assistants in the board office. In order to save some money, we've been holding these 2 vacancies because we didn't need them. The money has been in the budget all along, but the need to staff these positions has become more urgent because of our self-insurance claim volumes as well as compliance issues. So right now, we're actively trying to fill these 2 central office positions. Once again, it's been held in the budget already, and we're just going to be filling them now. Next, we discussed a multitude of issues related to PTEA negotiations. We also discussed some specific staff requests, and then we discussed QSAC review. The personnel component of our district evaluation seems to be in good shape for the review. And then finally, we did a touch base on our committee's goals for the year to develop an adjusted stipend plan prior to contract negotiations, to work on negotiating a contract by June 30th, and to participate in critical hiring decisions as needed, starting with an assistant superintendent of curriculum, which we have successfully done already. And we've noted we are progressing towards our annual goals. The personnel items we're voting on are fairly standard. Are there any questions before we vote?
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Smarter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Sam?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richards?
I'm abstaining on 13, and yes or no.
Mrs. Thorne?
Yes.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. And we're up to the policy committee.
Hi.
Oh, wait, wait a second. We have one item. We should make a motion first, and then we can do. Somebody want to make a motion? Mrs. Woolridge, and second. Mr. Salmon. Okay, sorry.
So, we have a couple of second readings. Can you hear me? Can you hear?
You have to hold it a little bit closer. Just take it out.
Okay. We have a couple of second readings. We have a policy and regulation 1613, disclosure and review of applicant employment history. We went over that. Nothing's changed since last time. Also, the policy and regulation 5561, the use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities. Nothing's changed either since our last discussion on those. We also met on October 8th, and basically the whole discussion was the NJQ staff. And Robin already described what that is. And in policy, we went over our governance indicators. There are 14 district performance review indicators that measure development of line curriculum, the overseeing of the budget process, that targets students' achievement,
review, update, and adoption of policies for consistency with statute, regulation, and case law, evaluation of the superintendent, and review of the administrative contracts. We also go over the operations indicators. There's 18 of those. And as a summary, there's implementing policies on student contact, attendance, alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use and harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Reporting data to the NJ SMART and the Electronic Violence and Vandalism Reporting System, which is now known as the Student Safety Data System. And providing transportation, health, counseling, and guidance services. Also providing transportation, health, counseling, and guidance services. As I think Robin said, the district may receive a maximum of 100 points in each of these areas. They have to score at least 80 points to be recommended for certification as a high-performing district by the State Board of Ed. We went through all the indicators for governance and operations, and we're confident that we will qualify as a high-performing district in these areas. I don't see any issues. And that's about it. Any questions?
We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes?
Mrs. Corner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Fritz?
Yes.
Mrs. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're up to the curriculum committee.
The curriculum committee met on October 12th, and so we had a number of agenda items. The first was a presentation on the health curriculum revision at William Annan and Ridge. So at William Annan, the revised health curriculum for grades 6 through 8 has been implemented this year. So in grades 6 and 7, health has been expanded from a 6-week cycle to a 9-week marking period per year. So now all 3 grades have the same amount of time in health. The student assistance counselors are now teaching 3 days in each health class per marking period in all 3 grades. And some new topics have been added in each grade, mainly involving mental health and suicide prevention, healthy sleep habits, stress management, healthy relationships, and so forth. At Ridge High School, the proposal is to implement the revised Ridge Health curriculum beginning next fall in fall 2019. There's no impact on current staffing, but 2 to 3 additional classrooms per period would be required, and the building can accommodate this. So the recommendations are to expand health in grades 10 and 11 from 1 marking period to 2 marking periods. And this can be done without additional staffing. Grade 9 already has 1 marking period of Project Adventure and 1 marking period of health, and that would not change. And grade 12 would retain 1 marking period of health. The health curriculum at each grade level has also been revised. In grade 9, there's new topics in suicide prevention, mental health disorders, and stress management. The curriculum for grade 10 is currently 1 marking period of driver education. So proposed health topics for the additional marking period are personal growth and acceptance, communication, bullying, suicide prevention, drugs and alcohol, nutrition, and fitness. In grade 11, it currently includes first aid and CPR, drugs and medicines, relationships, and sexuality. In the revised curriculum, they would be adding more information on those and adding information on stress management. They would be somewhat increasing the instruction time on first aid and CPR. And then for grade 12, they would be having stress management, suicide prevention, information about sexuality and relationships, and childbirth and parenting. Mr. Shello also plans to conduct a review of the physical education curriculum in grades 6 through 12 in summer 2019. At Ridge, he would like PE to focus more on fitness, wellness, and lifelong activity. We also had an update on the rotating job regarding the grading process and procedures, supervisors have recently checked the number of grades posted so far in marking period 1 and have been reminding teachers about posting grades routinely. We also had a number of brief presentations on summer curriculum projects in 2018. So the first was mathematics. So curriculum projects were completed for accelerated math 6, which is a new course, intermediate algebra and trigonometry B, another new course, standards-based report cards for grades K to 2, intermediate algebra and trigonometry was a revision of year 2 of the curriculum. Math telescope curriculum for grades 3 and 5 was revised for year 4. And standards-based report cards for grade 1 was revised for year 2. In social studies, a new program, Social Studies Alive, was adopted in grades 3 through 5. This program includes hands-on and differentiated resources to better support instruction in civics, economics, geography, and current events. There was also, at William Annan, a team of 6th through 8th grade teachers developed a plan for students to develop skills in note-taking, citizenship, media literacy, and current events. At Ridge, a project focused on incorporating current events and values lessons into all required college prep social studies classes. Other courses that were revised included AP U.S. Government and Politics Economics, AP Economics and Personal Financial Literacy, U.S. History through Film, and Genocide and Human Behavior. For world languages, there was a program-wide revision for the Italian courses at Ridge. Latin Culture and Society at Ridge was revised. Spanish 2 CP and Honors were both revised. And Foundations of Language at William Annan. This is a new 8th grade semester course, and it's for students who did not take world language at William Annan. It's taught in English with examples in Spanish and other languages. We had a report on American Sign Language. Ms. Stotler reported that Ridge has one ASL teacher who teaches 6 sections. About 1/3 of the students in ASL classes have IEPs, and Ms. Stotler said that the special education students are succeeding in the course. The teacher speaks with the child study team every day and makes modifications as needed. The next item was a discussion regarding revisions to 2019-20 Program of Studies, Information and Scheduling and Course Changes. We reviewed a draft that has a number of changes, and the goals of the revised information were to help students make the right decision about courses as early as possible in the scheduling process while still allowing some changes, and maximize the courses students could take while maintaining the integrity of the Ridge Master schedule. So the main changes in the draft was an overview of course scheduling and selection was added. Information was added about teacher recommendations. These would not be binding, but are intended to advise students and provide information to them when they select courses. There were some date changes for certain scheduling items, and some changes to dropping a course and level changes. The next topic we talked about was 7th grade Algebra 1, and Ms. Bowman, the math supervisor, has proposed changing the entrance criteria to this class for 2019-20. The proposal increases the qualifying MAP scores, and this is based on historical data from several years of students taking the class. And she's finding that students who have MAP scores of 255 or higher have the highest rate of success in the course. The next topic had to do with the Elementary Gifted and Talented program. A committee's been established that's currently reviewing the elementary GNT program, looking at research and best practices for gifted education, and will consider recommendations for modifying and improving the current elementary GNT program. This committee has already met twice enrollment in ESL classes has been steadily increasing. And for example, in 2013, the ESL program had 36 students. In spring 2018, it had 89 students. And enrollment fluctuates because students move. One population of students that is increasing is SLIFE students. It stands for Students with Limited and Interrupted Formal Education. These students are mainly from Central America. In these countries, compulsory education ends in elementary school. And so parents must pay for their children's education after that. These students primarily attend Oak Street, William N. and Ridge. And so during the last school year, 2017-18, approximately 16% of the students enrolled in ESL lacked basic skills in formal education in their native language. The students at Ridge in particular face major challenges because they lack knowledge in many academic subjects such as math and science, not just English. To support all the various ESL students and their families, the World Language Department holds an international welcome night in October every year. And on Tuesday, October 9th, in Scotland held the district's first meeting, open house for Spanish-speaking families. It took place basically all day, and each family stayed for about an hour. She plans to have another meeting for these Spanish-speaking families when the first trimester elementary report cards come out. The next meeting is on Wednesday, November 14th. And are there any questions? Mr. Salmon?
Yeah, on the health side, about the kids being able to pull out of health for science labs. In the minutes, there was a mention of concern there. Can you give a little bit more about the discussion there? I mean, I think, given the topics that are discussed in health or that are going to be discussed in health, is there any concept of potentially having the kids be required to be in health and not pull out of labs, or?
Ms. Fox, could you maybe respond to that? Sure. Can you repeat the question?
So in the way I understand it is kids can miss health if they have a science lab. So that in the way it's written here, it says kids can pull out 2 days of health per week to go to science lab. So given the topics that are discussed in health and some of the stuff we saw in the stressor survey and climate, student stress, is there an idea to somehow change that so that kids will have time to do science lab, but then are also showing up to health?
So a couple things. Students are pulled out for lab when they have one science, and then the second pull out will have to do the second AP science course. That's where it would be 2 days a week. So it was expressed by the health teacher and the health supervisor as a concern because they are missing important instruction. So it's related to our discussion of the rotating drug schedule. That's a potential solution to that, depending on how we organize the labs and potentially the schedule. And it is also related then to the discussions we're having around option 2 and the different impacts on health. That come up in a program evaluation itself. So you mentioned it right now because it is a concern that students miss that much health, and it's something they want to look at.
Is there any discussion of how to get the kids that are pulling out for labs the substance of what's discussed in the health class?
Well, could I just jump in, Kristen, for a second? One of the things they said was that some of the kids, because they can't miss that many health classes, some of them are going to health 2 different periods. So like they're going to one health class and then a different health class to make up the one they missed for lab. So that's really not ideal for the teacher to have 2 different teachers teaching this kid health and they're going to a different period. You know what I mean? It's not their normal health class.
They'll get the right number of minutes, but sometimes by going different periods on a different day of the week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what, are they going to places like study hall or something? Like how are they fitting that new health class into their schedule?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have a complete answer for you.
Or at their lunch, or at their lunch, or whatever.
Lunch.
Okay. So,
varies a lot by student.
yeah. All right. I guess one of the issues that we've been talking about obviously is kind of like marketing our guidance services and student like SAC services and things like that. And it sounds like we're using health to do that somewhat, right? So like the SACs are going to be teaching health for 3 days during the marking period, and some of the topics that are being talked about are things that we've seen in the stressor survey. So, and then if you're having kids pull out of health for more work, it seems like those are the kids that might need to be listening to. I don't know, that's a generalization, but that's, you know, a lot of work that miss what we're trying to get to them to balance this issue. So, yeah, so that's what I was just looking for, a little more information on that and what, you know, what we might do with that concern. So, okay. On the grade 7 algebra thing, where did the time, so it sounds like if somebody took 80 minutes to do the map test, they would get docked a point on the rubric, so that would decrease their map score by 1.
It would decrease their points on the rubric, because they have to have certain number of points.
Oh, okay, all right.
Rubric to get into the class.
So where did that come from, the idea of using time with map? Is that,
I think, again, it was looking at students' performance, right?
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it last time as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
That's an untimed test.
Yeah.
But however, when students are taking the test to qualify for an advanced math class, that is really like taking an honors class, really. It's not honors, but it is taking accelerated math above their grade level. So the time does become a factor because in the course it's moving at a faster pace. So while we don't want to penalize them and say that they stop them from taking longer time on the test, we want to reflect it in the rubric. Does that make sense?
Yes, but it's just for accelerated math. So the time component is really just used as a way to differentiate students for accelerated math. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think time should be a factor across all of math, but I understand why you do. I think that makes sense. I just didn't understand the 80 minutes and where that sort of came from. But I guess it was from past experience. And then just the last question I had was on the G&T review committee. Can you just mention how that got formed, like how the parent on that committee, is that, yeah. Okay, good, sorry.
It's the town teacher and the principal of each building selected a parent from the building to serve on it.
That was a parent of a G&T student?
Not in all cases. Just a parent who had an interest, they reached out to their parent community. I'm not positive, I have to check with the PTO perhaps, or just to their parent communication. So they're not all parents of G&T teacher students, but at least one is.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other ones? Mr. Byrne?
I'd just like to comment that I think Tim's questions were excellent. That was a very information-packed set of minutes, and it probably could take twice as long to present if you get into some of the details. So the rest of the board will understand what happened at the committee meeting. So I want to thank him for taking the time to ask questions.
Any other questions? You have a question, Mark?
Yeah, I have a question. When you're talking about the SLIFE students, I mean, is that how you pronounce it, SLIFE?
SLIFE, yeah.
What's the, how many of them, like, is this something that's going to grow, or we're going to have to have a whole program, a separate program? Because, I mean,
There's potential. It's a changing population.
I'm only asking because
it's definitely possible.
it's very, I mean, you know, that's something we have to have like on our radar to.
That's why she's putting into a lot of those programs and trying to provide services for them, evenings, translation services.
Okay.
But they are changing, so, it'll go up and it'll go down in a given year.
Okay, but are we able to, because you're saying high school kids, they can't speak English if they haven't, because they've only had a fourth grade education, which high school is like, I mean, curious because this is kind of like for you and me anyway.
Right.
And it just seems like it might be going up. You know, I don't know. Just, I never even heard of it before, so I'm just like, I was like, well, you know, it seems like something we may have to plan for. You know what I'm saying?
Good question.
Thanks, Mr. Burnett. You look very
Any other questions? It's hard for me to see them coming under the table. Okay, so we're up to advocacy.
Advocacy reported out the last meeting. Our next meeting is Monday. It's Maddie's announcement that we're meeting with that student government on Monday at 8:45, so I guess we have to meet at Bridge at 8:30ish. So if the advocacy committee can help me have availability, that'd be great. I also wanted to remind everybody about the final strategic planning meeting on Monday, also at Bridge at 7 in the cafeteria. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? We're up to the ad hoc SEL committee. We met this past Thursday, and I have yet to be able to share out to the board minutes as soon as I can report out at the next meeting. Okay, we're up to liaison committee reports.
Do you want to talk about the school board conference? So for those of you who are not familiar, once a year the New Jersey State School Board Association holds an annual conference which is both training and networking opportunities for school board members from across the state. And this year, several of our administrators as well as a majority of the board was able to participate. So I thought I would just share a few highlights of the information that I received that I thought was valuable to our district, and then if any other board members want to chime in of something they got of value there. The thing that I found most heartening was Dr. Lamont Recollet, who's the new Commissioner of Education, gave one of the keynote speeches. And it's really the first time I've kind of felt hopeful of the support we're going to be getting from the state level. He was energized, he was enthusiastic, he had a lot of fresh new ideas. The other thing that I thought was interesting is in the many years that I've attended, I've never seen Department of Education members attending the workshop, going to breakout sessions, and interacting with board members, but this year there was a whole posse from the Department of Education working with us, so that was a great start. One of the breakout sessions that I thought was most interesting was taught by teachrock.org. It's a music education foundation. It was founded by Steve Van Zandt. If any of you are familiar with Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, he's the guitar player. They have free curriculum that they're offering to teachers across the country that enhances not just music education, but social studies education, engaging the students about talking about contemporary events through the music that was going on at the time. Mrs. Fox also attended the session, and we're going to see how we can integrate that into our curriculum. The other breakout session I thought was exceptionally helpful was taught by a SAC, a student assistance counselor in Asbury Park, who not only talked about the importance of SEL initiatives, but she gave very tactical and detailed information on how they rolled out a program to the Asbury Park students, integrating both yoga and meditation, not just at a single time, but throughout their entire program, both academics, athletics, everything. And it seems like something that would be of great value here, so I'm working on getting the presentation and possibly getting her to come speak here if there's any interest. And finally, the last little moment, there's a very large trade show floor of lots of companies that support school districts, not just companies, but not-for-profits. And Mrs. McEwen and I ran into Trudy Doyle, who used to be our county superintendent back in the day. And she now works for the New Jersey Education Foundation Partnership. And we spoke to her about some potential ideas to get the Berners Township Education Foundation up and running again. That used to be a big fundraiser to support our schools, and it's really greatly missed. So she may have some ideas of getting it started again. Anyway, those were my highlights from the week. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I just have a question. There's a ballot question regarding some additional funding for schools.
every news article I've read has been extremely vague and general with no details, and I was wondering if at New Jersey school boards, if there was any, no, there's no information.
There wasn't any more detail than what we already know about that.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the money that could be given to districts for school security. There's money for a lot of stuff in there, but we don't know exactly how it would be divvied up, how it would be divided up. Yeah, it was, as Mrs. Werner said, a very different vibe at this school boards convention this year. I felt much more optimistic about, like she said, the Department of Education and how it may support districts in the next several years. And also, there was more bipartisan discussion at the legislative sessions, and there were some new state board members who actually have a lot of education experience. One of the new board members was a special education teacher for many years, and she served on the local board of education. Another one also had a lot of public school experience, so that's good, because for a while, very few of them did. So that was another good thing. We attended a lot of different trainings on different things, negotiations. We went to legal updates and things like that, so it was very beneficial. Okay, so we're now up to public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone has a comment, please tell us your name and address when you come up.
My name is Prachi Jain, 65. Prachi Jain, 65 Canberra Way. First of all, I'd like to thank the district, the Board of Education, all of the members for the strategic planning night. It was nice to see everybody come together, the parents, the teachers, the counselors, the board, come together and discuss the issues that we have in our district. And that gave us a platform to voice our concerns. One of the concerns that we have is regarding the engineering track at Ridge High School. We are now following the PLTW program, the Project Equal. And last year, a few students got together and signed a petition that was disregarded, unfortunately, because they were not using the tools that they should be using, that Ridge already provides, like laser printers, like 3D printers, laser cutters, whatever. And it was, they still feel that there's less hands-on learning, there's more theory in engineering than what they thought they would be using. When they enter the program after the grueling process of interview and essays and everything, they really thought that they would be learning by using the tools, not just by theory. And the students are disappointed. We have emailed the board with pertinent examples the students have written, so we'd like the board to take that into consideration, that either let's go back to the program that was previously being used, or do something that provides more time to the students for using the tools that Ridge already has.
Hello, good evening. This is Aditi Tandon, and my address is 178 Smoke Rise Road. Firstly, I would really like to thank the board. This was very fascinating. It always is. Also, as Prachi mentioned, I was there at the strategic planning night too, and that was a really nice initiative. And the SOS emails are greatly appreciated, because we do realize that you are, as a board, trying to help our kids, and it's really nice. We are here for the STEAM engineering track. STEAM has 2 other tracks, but there's nothing to compare it with, because engineering was there previously before PLTW was taken on. So we do have some point of reference. Today we sent out an email to the Board of Education. I don't know how many of you would have had a chance to look at it, but we did try to include some examples, simply because we have been talking to our kids, Last year, they took it on themselves to talk to the board. I believe some students even showed up at the Board of Education and made a talk. So now the parents are here, the three of us here, I think there's some more parents. Our entire point is twofold. One is that the kids feel that there's a lot of tools and equipment at which that they're not able to use. They also have documented proof that this was in use earlier, and some of them were at STEM middle school, and they believe the STEM middle school program was much better than what they are doing at high school in sophomore year, leave alone freshmen, which they were very disappointed with. In 8th grade, we were all there for the STEAM presentation. We were all very excited for our kids, and unfortunately, we feel as parents that that level of excitement has really dwindled in our kids, and we don't want them to become, to turn away from engineering, because we really think they have that aptitude. So that was one of our core concerns. The other that we really thought we should bring it to the board, and you possibly know of this, is that the teacher teaching, and he is a great guy and we don't have anything against him, but the teacher currently teaching STEAM engineering is a mathematics teacher. We have 2 or 3, I don't know, engineering teachers at Ridge, but they are not teaching our kids. It's a mathematics teacher. So we would like to have a conversation with the board as to why weren't the parents informed. Do you think that the kids are getting the best education in STEM, in engineering, that Ridge could deliver to them? So that's just what we want. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment? No? Okay, at this point I'll close public comment.
So just in brief response to this question about Project Lead the Way and the history of the engineering course, I feel as though this is something that the board has been all over in terms of the curriculum committee and the reports that it's been making in the last couple of years on the subject of how a new program is going. We've given updates in the past. I'm sure it'll continue to be a subject of discussion in Board of Ed Curriculum Committee meetings, and something that if you keep attending the meetings, you're going to hear more about. Certainly we appreciate the feedback of students and parents, and we're very appreciative of their attendance and participation at our strategic planning meetings. With regard to staffing, I can tell you that the staffing of technical education in school districts in the state of New Jersey, and I would hesitate to guess probably nationally, is extremely difficult to accomplish. We are seeing teacher shortages nationwide, and that is one area in particular that is next to impossible to get technical education trained individuals in school districts right now. So we're doing the best that we can with the resources that we have.
I think to engineering and medicine and the different courses that are offered under STEM, you can't really teach them in high school. They're much too involved, particularly engineering, where you have to do the science and the mathematics skills first before you can start solving the problems. You have to understand the science, you have to understand all the math on how science works before you can start designing things. It's a ton of work, and you can pretend to do it, but you're not really doing the engineering work in a short period of time. You might be able to take one little topic and explode it a little bit, but it's science and math that is the foundation of engineering. And the engineering really starts in the later years of college, not in the beginning. You don't do engineering as a freshman.
Anybody else? Okay, I think we are up to board forum, and we have at least one topic that we want to discuss tonight. We have been having discussions, as some of you who have been coming to board meetings for a very long time know, we've had discussions over a number of years about the Ridge High School schedule and possible options for a rotating drop schedule. We have been exploring different possibilities for finding out exactly how it would work in terms of our building and our schedule. And we had a phone conversation with a consultant that helps districts do this. I'll let Mr. Markarian talk about the consultant a little bit. I know the board members all got a copy of the proposal in the weekly notes, but why don't you just briefly describe it for the audience?
Sure. So with regard to evaluating Ridge High School and whether or not the rotating drop schedule that has been discussed off and on again for years is feasible to do, we've put out a request for proposals to a handful of companies, entities, consultants who might be able to help focus their attention specifically on this one issue and provide the board with some information that might be useful in understanding whether or not this is feasible. So as Mrs. McEwen just explained, we did receive some proposals in response to that request. I recommended that I felt as though that one of the respondents had the capacity to provide the board the kind of information I thought that they would want. We did have a conference call with that individual today, and I did provide the board with a copy of their proposal so that everyone would have some sense of cost and scope of work that this individual was proposing to do for the district. In essence, what we're really looking to determine first and foremost is whether or not the building itself, with the student requests of courses, the number of available classrooms, the number of available specialty classrooms like computer labs, like science labs, photography, woods, things that are specialized, to what extent would a rotating drop schedule work with those constraints, given that the schedule that we're looking at moves us from students working with a 9-period day to working with an 8-period day with a unit lunch. So the substance of our conversation, multiple conversations that I've had and the conversation that we had again today with some representation of district staff and some board members that were on hand, was just an opportunity to ask questions and get a flavor for whether or not this individual could provide the types of answers to questions that we would need to begin to get a better handle on whether or not this is even possible to do. So that was the reason for our call this afternoon, and my suggestion to the board is to entertain this individual's capacity to help answer questions for the board and provide some detailed analysis of the existing schedule and its feasibility to be run as a rotating drop schedule for Ridge.
I just want to clarify for anyone in the audience that when Mr. Markarian said 8 periods, he did not mean that we're going to have one less class at Ridge High School. Students would still take 8 classes and they would have lunch like they do now. It would just be that during lunchtime, everyone would eat at the same time and there wouldn't be classes. So that would mean there would only be 8 periods to schedule the classes in, which limits the building and facilities and teachers and classrooms and stuff to 8 periods. But students would still have the same number of classes as they have now. And as Mr. Salmon had asked questions about people taking health classes at weird times, we do have students doing funky things with their schedules right now. And doing things at lunch sometimes, and so it could be, that is a factor that makes it more complicated, I think, for our district than for some districts, because some districts have switched to this kind of schedule without having a consultant, but our schedule is super complicated, and our building is super complicated at Ridge. Anybody else want to chime in?
So what we're really looking for right now is a little bit of discussion as to whether or not the Board of Ed wants to pursue having a consultant evaluate whether or not the schedule that we're currently running could be run as a rotating drop schedule, and what would the trade-offs be in order for that to happen. I'm really looking for some guidance as to whether or not you want to move forward with that. I anticipate that the initial feasibility analysis would cost approximately $20,000.
I think if you lock into 3 courses in the morning and 3 courses in the afternoon and a common lunch, that is a bit of a handicap. If you could find a way to do it so we had multiple lunch periods, but still had the same impact as a rotating drop schedule, longer classes, moving, and I don't know whether that's possible, but my guess is somebody has done it. So if someone could bring any of that information to us, I'd like to hear that input.
Well, the reason for the rotating part of the schedule is so that you can have longer classes and students drop. They have 2 classes that don't meet each day, so you have longer class periods, which is good for teaching for a lot of reasons in terms of doing projects or labs or certain activities. The lunch, part of the reason to have everyone have lunch at the same time is so that students can, do things together at lunchtime, and so the teachers can have professional development time and time when they're all having a free period at the same time. So there's the benefit of the common lunch. So I'm not quite sure whether you were just saying you want to see longer class periods, Mike, or?
Well, I know 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, but I wonder whether there's a way to do 2 and 4, or 4 and 2, to get mixed eating times. I don't know. I like the idea and the concept. Unfortunately, the building doesn't have the cafeteria space, but I wondered whether anybody has tackled that nationwide on a more varied plan, but still having the total impact the same. So I don't know the answer.
Yeah, we have been thinking about doing this rotating drop schedule for way too many years, and I think it's 5, more than 5, yeah. And I think it's time to take care of business or get off the pot. And I think that $20,000 is a small investment to either move forward or be done with it for once and for all. I've spoken to a few of you who were in the meeting. It sounds like this consultant has a lot of experience in this area. We already know all of the benefits. Gosh, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago where I toured high schools with rotating drop schedules, and the students love it, the teachers love it. There are all sorts of benefits, both academically and from a stress perspective. So yeah, I think we need to move forward. I'm tired of talking about it. I want to either do it or decide we're not going to do it. Ditto.
All right, so we have the proposals, and we're leaning towards one of them, is that, okay. Now, they're a procedure, figure it out. Just the company or the guy?
So we put it out to several folks, only two responded back. The difference between the two, one is more of a programming and software type approach, very number crunching, analytic, but not necessarily school-based experience. So that may provide us information, but I don't think it's going to provide it to the level where you could ask questions like, could you do something with the unit lunch where you have multiple lunches? And, to answer the question, yes, it has been done. To your point, Mr. Byrne, there are models that do something similar to what we're doing, and they have 3 lunches blocked together in the middle of the day, and then what happens is if you have the middle lunch, you end up going to class for 30 minutes, then going to lunch, and then going back to that same class for the other 30 minutes. So some of those models are less than ideal, and they're done to make it work in scenarios where perhaps you want to try to take advantage of your cafeteria to a greater extent, but now you've got to allocate 60 minutes of the day to get your lunches done. So you end up spending more time doing lunches. To maximize the amount of time, if you do the unit lunch, you can provide a time where everybody's free at the same time to do some professional work and still be able to feed all the students at the same time. So there's lots of pros and cons, and the reason that you might consider someone like the consultant that we're looking at is that they have that school-based experience, which I think is going to be able to give you as board members opportunity to ask questions like that and get feedback and experience versus the company that is more of a software provider is not going to give you as much strength in that area, I don't think.
And then, so the consultant will do multiple, like, I know we're talking about forever, right?
The focus would be on one schedule, but you could certainly ask questions about
For the price, like do more than one, that's what it is.
For
Like, not more than one, but, like, will they give you options? Yes.
Well, I think they could certainly answer questions about what kinds of things they believe you could do that would work. But the initial focus is going to be on a basic rotating drop.
Rotating drop that we were talking about.
Right.
And then, is there any way, I'm trying to think of doing it without having to build a cafeteria. Like, would they be able to be like, okay, you can do this, you can do that, without having to,
We could certainly talk about that. I think we could ask him what he thinks those possibilities would be.
without having to actually.
Right. Well, we did talk about it in the past, and one of the things that, right now, we're running five lunches to get the students through. So even to run 3 lunches, we couldn't get it done.
And then, the whole point is to simplify our schedule, yes? Like, I know everyone says how crazy our schedule is.
Well, there's a lot of objectives, right?
This would be a simplification of, is that one of our goals? Like, this would be a
It would simplify the schedule, right? It would make it so that students have longer class meetings. It would make it so that students only met with 6 classes a day.
Everyone's not going to get what they want, but everyone will get what they need.
Well, part of the analysis is to get a clear handle on that. That's part of the analysis. Like, what would be the trade-offs, right? So if it does make things simpler, what complicated things are being given up in the process of becoming simpler, and that's what people need to understand.
Well, so I think it would be great. I'm all for it. I think it would help out with scheduling, with freeing up teachers, with freeing up people, so they're not always trying to squeeze something else into somebody's schedule. So.
I'm a visual person, so the idea of being able to have somebody come in and put a schedule, I need to see it. I think we all know the benefits. I think we talked about, kids' emotional well-being, the benefits of that, the large classrooms. I get all that. I think we should definitely go forward, but I think it would help all of us to have somebody come in and say, here's the schedule, here's how it looks, the moving pieces. I think we can't do it on our own, and no one's going to be able to say yes or no, we should do this until we have that piece.
Yeah, I agree also. I think we should go forward with this, because if we don't, we're sort of stuck where we are now, where we really can't kind of make any progress on this, even though, there are a number of advantages that we recognize and a lot of support from various, administration and team.
I'm in favor of doing this. We have been talking about this for at least 5 years or longer. And I do think it's time to decide, or to see if it's even feasible, just even in terms of our building and the number of classrooms we have, what that's going to look like with this schedule. And I'm hopeful that this will work. And we've been talking about doing a mock schedule forever. So I'm hoping that, even just to see if it's feasible to even go forward to do the mock schedule would be an improvement.
I know they do this at Chatham. They have rotating drop, because I know a teacher there, and he said that the staff loves it. And they didn't do anything with their cafeteria, and he has like students come into his art classroom and eat lunch in there, and everybody just it's okay with everybody. So, both proposals had some component of working within a student information system and specifically call out Aspen. Do we need something in place that's just like our established student information system before we bring in somebody? Or do you have to use Aspen, or no? Okay.
So it sounds like people are in support of finding out whether we can do this. Right? Does anyone have anything else for board forum? Would someone like to make a motion for adjournment? Mrs. Garner and Mrs. Woodridge. All in favor?
Yes.